We go. All right, here we go. Um, this is a special error-prone episode of HC Chats. I'm here with uh, Michael Michel to talk about the price of power and several other things. Um, Today, when this video launches, I'm going to be doing a lot of promo around the re-release of Price of Power. So you've either seen stuff on my blog or you're about to. I haven't decided yet the order. But part of this celebration of the republication is a little chat here with Michael. Would you please introduce yourself to the people and talk about, how you got into fantasy writing?
Oh, great. Well, that'll take 15 minutes. No.
All right.
I'll try to keep it brief. Michael Michel, gritty epic fantasy author. Some people like to call it grimdark. My debut series is relaunching with the first book on April 2nd. That's this book here. And the series is called not the Dreams of Dust and Steel. I should probably know my own series title, right?
It would be good. Yeah.
And it will be followed, book one will be followed with the first ever time release of A Graveyard for Heroes. As seen here, it's a chonkier bit. And I also wrote The Way of the Wizard, but I've been writing with the aim of professional publication for 13 years now. I would say I am a failed short story writer, and
Judging by the size of Graveyard, yes.
A failed short story writer. This is actually the hardback, and I got to tell you, just a quick aside. So I'm looking at this one is a paperback from Amazon, okay, and this is a hardback from Ingram. The quality, you can just tell from the coloration, because I have proofs of this one as well, but you can tell from just the quality of the coloring that the hardback from Ingram is just a much higher quality. It's not like this is bad, but
right.
This looks just it looks slick. So kudos to Ingram Spark. But that will be available on Amazon. The hardback, Amazon and Ingram are like in cahoots, you could say. So Amazon doesn't print books that are as big as mine in hardback. So I go through Ingram, and then Amazon makes Ingram's books available on Amazon. Not that anybody needs to hear that, but there it is. So failed short story writer. I turned to writing novels at the ripe old age of 32, and or somewhere thereabouts, and I haven't really looked back. I guess I was made to write gigantic books with a billion characters and lots of little threads that my OCD could tie together as time went on.
Yeah. You said a million characters. That is not really an exaggeration. I dipped a toe into Price of Power last night, and I mean the dramatist personae. Holy cow! That's a prologue of itself.
Is it bad? Let me look at it. You're talking to me. I'm like, is that bad? I don't even know.
At least on my Kindle version, it's like, how many people are there?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. By the way, folks, that's a little tip. Get the hard copy so you can stick a bookmark in it and jump back and forth quickly and easily. Unless you're, slicker on your Kindle than I am, because it's. But
yeah, I'm not good at the Kindle either. I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I will say, actually, I'm currently reading Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. Love it. It's great. I love it. It's very much within my vein of. I would say he's definitely one of the people who I'm like, this is kind of how I like to write too. It's like perfectly prose, very character heavy. But I forgot who a few characters were, and I'm 100 pages in, and there's not that many characters, and I'm like, oh shit. I hope I did a good job of introducing my characters. But just to forewarn you, HC. So just a quick writing tip, I guess. I learned some I learned some pretty strong lessons in the beta phase of The Price of Power the first time around. This was 4 or 5 years ago now. And that was how to introduce characters so that they stick, right? So characters that you don't know or that are off page, because to do that book, I had a few chapters where I was talking about characters that weren't there, and nobody could remember them, right? And so always having a face and some kind of specific interaction when introducing a character, never referring to them, or almost never referring to a character off page without introduction, and having them be important in some way. It's like crucial to like retaining. And you'll also notice the structure of the Price of Power book one is almost set up like the Canterbury Tales or Hyperion, in that it's four pretty distinctly different storylines that are going, and they don't really intersect in book one. They just don't.
Oh,
and that was one way that I thought I could help people to ground in with each character, because if you're trying to tie them all together, the lines can get blurred, right? But if it's like, this is Thespis, okay, where's Thespis at? Well, I remember Thespis' story in Thespis' book. So it's almost like writing or reading 4 books concurrently. And then when we get into book 2, storylines start to cross. Book 3, they start to cross more. And there's more characters. But hopefully people remember it better by that time, since they've been through a whole book.
Yeah.
But that was just
so does book 2 start with a quick recap? Or
yes. Yep. The cost thus far, or something, the journey thus far, something like that.
Oh, nice.
Or does it? Wait, what? There's some things I think missing in this first print edition of the book. Oh no. You can read the story thus far on my website.
Oh, okay.
So that's going up on the website. But there is going to be one written for, I think I have it for all 3 books now. The 3rd book, by the way, is done. Or it's written. It's in the, I'm revising currently.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. So now, okay, that out of the way. What is Dreams of Dust and Steel? Did I get that right? I forgot to write it down. Oh no.
No, you got it.
Yeah. What is the story? What is it about? I'm 5% in a book 1, and by the way, grim. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Waste no time in establishing this is not going to be cozy.
No.
Yeah.
It's funny, again, standards, lots of characters. Is it grim? I'm like, for me, it's not. It's just gritty. I would call it gritty. So it really depends. It's like a subjective goalpost on that one.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Gritty. Gritty.
Gritty. I like that. Yeah. I'm trying to steer a little away from grimdark, just because, marketing wise. I also think it also has flavors of, as you'll see as you read on, like heroic and triumphant notes of that as well. And so I'm like, okay, well, how do I come to terms with this? It's not, sometimes when you read grimdark, it's almost, there's you can almost sense that there's an infusion of shock factor of like, well, this is supposed to be grimdark, so this character would just kill his friend for no reason because he's grimdark. And while my book series is gritty, while I still want there to be a limitlessness to the reactions characters can have because of the genre, right? So like, for instance, if it was just heroic or YA, if you're writing YA fantasy or you're Brandon Sanderson, your main character can't say, the fuck you, I'm gonna gut you, right? It's like when they're really mad, they might say that if they're really mad in real life. So while there is that kind of limitlessness to the reactions characters can have, there's also flavors of like, there's hope and triumph and heroism and such. So I like to call it gritty. Long-winded answer. So what is Dreams of Dust and Steel about? Well, the first book title is pretty, The Price of Power is, it's right there in the title. If you want, it's like the idea of things require work, things require sacrifice, things. This is coming from me as the author. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what it's like to write the fucking book. Can I cuss on this? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. But the price of power is a pretty succinct encapsulation of what the themes will be throughout. Going a little deeper into that, I wanted to integrate the things I love the most, right? Flavors of my favorite things. You know, you go to like, I remember going to like Taco Bell as a kid, and you go to the soda machine, the fountain dispenser, and you might do, you know, some people like to drink Pepsi, plain Pepsi, boop, and they fill their whole cup with plain Pepsi. Well, me and my brothers would sometimes be like, but I like Dr. Pepper and root beer and Pepsi and this and that. I'm going to do all five, right? So that's kind of how I went about writing the book. So Game of Thrones, right, meets X-Men is the idea behind the whole thing. And where that came from is kind of me trying to create the magic system, in that I get a little bored with single, like, structured magic systems sometimes, right? There's the whole idea of here's the magic system, and then the cool thing is breaking the magic system, right? In the words of Brandon Sanderson, the hard magic system. I like more the X-Men world, the soft magic system. I love the way that characters' powers relate to their internal psychology or their background, the way they were raised. As a character-heavy author and a character-driven writer, I thought that suited my magic system much better, to have powers, right? Low fantasy, or not low fantasy, soft magic system. Each power is individualized to whoever may get it based on their personal suffering. So the idea of being able to turn there's the price of power, which is right, like sacrifice, the cost, etc., of attainment. And then there's also the price of power around the magic system, which is a little bit more of a shining light, in that you can transform your pain and your suffering as a person into a power, right? And that's kind of a message that I want to bleed through. There's definitely hopefully this doesn't turn people off, but there's a very strong spiritual undertone to the whole series. I would have loved to market it as gritty, spiritual, epic fantasy, because, you know, the evil antagonists are mostly cult leaders of some kind or other, right? And that aspect of spirituality in the magic system, of like going within, taking your suffering, assessing, coming to terms, and then expressing it as a power, is so prevalent. So hopefully that all made sense.
Yeah, I think it did.
We'll see.
And I can't wait to see how that works out on the page. I mean, was it? In chapter 1, I mean, it's clear that there's going to be a price to power. I mean, you didn't waste any time. Yeah.
What?
That grandmother, that grandmother, and forget me even remembering her name at this point. I was really too tired. I shouldn't have started last night. But I mean, you got a grandmother watching her grandson, and there's a price to be paid right there. I'm like, okay, yeah. And that's, I don't know. I'm guessing that's like a %3. So, yeah, it's right there. And if that's going to continue throughout, yeah, I'm pretty sure the message gets through.
Yeah. Also, when people talk to me about the book, I start to go, oh, okay, maybe it is grimdark shit. I had a fan reach out the other day, and he was saying stuff about, he was like, oh, is this person gonna die? He's like, they have to die, right? Like, that's just their character arc in Hollywood. They have to die, blah blah. And I just kind of poker face them back, because I'm not gonna tell them. I tell one person that. I used to tell my wife, but now because there's so many twists and turns and stuff, and now she's like, do not tell me anything. And I'm like, I have to. I have to tell somebody. And so I have one friend who I tell all the twists, all the turns of all the books. But this one fan was just like, "Are you gonna do like a red wedding kind of thing? You know, like, are you gonna have one of those?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm not." I was like, "Most popular books have one." I was like, "Should I?" I always my thought is always like, "Should I?" But then I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about each character and how the book ends because I know the ending for everybody, and it's all
Uh-huh.
pretty clear in my head. And I was like, "No red wedding, but it's all pretty rough. Not bad. It's not grimdark, okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it's damn close. It's rough. It's rough.
Sure.
Yeah,
So,
you'll see by the end of book one.
okay. Um, so you say, yeah, you've got the endings worked out. Is there some discovery still for you on how they get there? Or do you have it pretty locked down at this point in time?
Um, Subjective term lockdown. I mean, uh, like a 6 out of 10. No, yeah, a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
I actually, I have scenes that are coming to me now for book four. Like they'll
Mhm.
come randomly here and there. A scene will just hit you. You're driving. I don't listen to radio or anything while I'm driving. I just drive in complete silence for, if I'm on a road trip for a couple hours. That's a couple hours where I write scenes in my head, right? So I use that time for writing as well. And um, it when scenes start coming to me more and I start getting more excited about them and I start connecting dots, like it's not necessarily what I'm supposed to be doing right now, doing book
Right.
four, right?
Yeah.
Book three still has revisions and stuff. But the way I see it, it always helps to do book four. If I need to change something in book three, or even two at this point, I could still change.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's like the book telling me I'm like wanting to be written soon. I'm like, oh shit, well I better get done with book three. But I do have, I mean, I know how each character's ending is for the most part. I know a lot of I know the majority of like big emotional scenes along the way
Mm-hmm.
from the end of book three to the end of book five. Yeah, there's definitely some figuring out getting there. My
Okay.
suspicion, just so you know, this is what 236,000 words looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, book four and book three is maybe going to be that close, but probably a little like 10K short, probably 225. So book three will actually be a little smaller. And then book four and five, my suspicion is they will both be 250 to 300 each.
Okay.
So they're going to be 250 is 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
Um, so they'll be big. They'll be big
Yeah.
ones.
Okay. All righty.
Trying to keep it to 5 books. Trying to keep it to just five.
Okay. All right. But yeah, what you were saying about, you still have a chance for some revisions and stuff as you start working. Um,
Mhm.
Anton Strout, the late urban fantasy writer, would talk about how he loved working on the next book while he was revising or doing edits on the previous book because he could go plant seeds
Mhm.
and make it look like he was really careful and really thought out. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's
Which
like,
it
oh no,
was.
yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of.
no, totally. Um, okay, so why a new version of Price of Power? Why is there a second edition?
It's a good question. So it's a few different reasons.
Okay.
Um, Number one, I'm obsessive compulsive, and I was like, all right, sweet, I get to go back and polish it more. Um, and with that was also I would get these weird. I had my suspicions of, obviously the book is very well reviewed. People seem to love it. Appeared in lots of top five, top 10 lists the year that it
Mm-hmm.
came out. But as I grew as a writer, as I wrote book two, and now I've written book three, it's impossible. I mean, it's a never-ending cycle if you let it be. I got to cut the cord at some point, though. So this
Yeah.
is my way of cutting the cord. Is like, and now I'll relaunch and cut the cord, step back. But the one thing that was two things seem to really, for people who didn't like it or DNF'd it, two things seem to be more consistent, or like the feedback would
Hmm.
point to two things. One, people would call it a slow burn, which other people would say, I don't think it's a slow burn, right? The more invested you are in characters, the less of a slow burn I think it is. Okay.
Sure.
But I felt like I could tighten it just a touch, right? Cut like 10 words per page for the first 30 chapters, first half of the book, and or more, more than 10. I probably did cut more than 10, but just tighten it ever so slightly such that subconsciously it reads a little bit faster. So I cut 3,000 words from the book in the first 30 pages.
Mostly articles, A's, ands, those went away, right?
No, it would often be, if you want to really like glimpse into my writing, it would often be, so how do I give an example of this? It'd be like, HC frowned at Michael and then looked at the table. And then he said, and then you speak. Well, do you really need to be frowning and looking at the table? Do you need dual dialogue, dual action? Fucking no. I can tell it with one thing. So I just cut 3 words right there. Bam. HC looked at the table, right? Or HC frown. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
Stuff like that,
Okay.
right?
Sure.
And so that 3,000 words is roughly, 12 pages out of the first 30 chapters of Clutter. I also took a huge prologue. That was the other thing in the feedback and the reviews is like people would hate the prologue a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so, and I really liked the prologue, but I wrote the prologue from a place of like, I wrote it and then I showed it to people who'd already read book 1 and they loved it. But it's because they'd already read book 1 and they're looking back at a piece of the past that is really cool to them because they know all the characters and stuff. HC, if you had read the prologue of the first one, you want to talk about characters. There's like fucking 15 characters named in the prologue who never appear in the book again. Okay. I can't believe my book got any positive reviews, honestly. And it was also 20 pages.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Cut the prologue, wrote one that I love way more, and it's way shorter, and it sets a stronger tone. You read the prologue. It's not bad, right? It's good.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
I have a copy of edition 1.
Oh, you do? Okay.
At some point in time, I'm going to go read that prologue.
Read it after you read book 1. You'll probably love it. Okay. So there was that. Okay. That's kind of the writer in me piece. That's the like, man, I really want to change this. So different prologue, tightened up the first 30 chapters or so. I added a scene in chapter 18 that I thought was just fun. It's maybe 1,000 words, but I just threw in, I was like, this, what this book lacks? It lacks a magic battle. And so I threw a magic battle scene in that was pretty cool and kind of gives people like people will probably be like, whoa, what the hell? But that's okay. Little mystery, as long as it's exciting. Yeah. And then I added a dramatis persona. Okay. I added a map. So all of these things, I think the map was in some editions and formats, but I was waiting to upload it for a few of the others just till the relaunch. And then chapter header icons that kind of you can at a glance be like, okay, the fist and spikes, that's Barrowdane. Okay, every time I see that, that's a Barrowdane chapter, right? Or it has to do with Barrowdane. Sorry. Okay. You'll notice Akiris and Thespis share the same icon, and that is because it's dealing with they're occupying the same space of like spirituality and the river and all of that. So they get the same icon for that book. So anyways, that's like a big enhancement on reader experience. Okay. Sure. Another reason is the cover artist for that first edition. I talked to him on the phone, and there were some things that were like kind of red flags. So I like that cover. However, for how do I talk about this? There was some expression of doubt as to whether they could find an asset to match the character style from book to book. Okay. And he's like, oh, I'll find it. I'll find it for book 2. But he expressed doubt. And in my mind, I go, well, maybe you'll find it for 2, but will you find it for 3 and 4 and 5? I don't want to get to book 4 and then be like, oh, I paid you all this money. Now I have to find a new cover artist because you can't find something that looks good for book 5. Like, I'm not trying to do that. So I just pivoted. And thank goodness I found Chris Cant. And by the way, for what that for the price of what I was paying that person, what they were doing is manipulating assets, which is great and fine. A lot of graphic design, I mean, that's what graphic designers do and stuff. But I wanted some original art as well. Like that, as a young fantasy reader, it's like, oh, this is so sick. Like I didn't give a shit about icons and whatever on the cover. I wanted like a badass. I wanted a fucking dude on a horse with his cape billowing and a sword and a armor plate. Like it's way cool, right? So found Christopher Cant, talked to Patrick Leo, and he turned me on to him. Patrick is king for that. And Chris Cant has been phenomenal. Oh man, I'm so excited for y'all to see book 3 too. Book 3 is gonna be, that cover is, I have the cover and it's fantastic. And Rachel St. Clair. So Rachel St. Clair did the typography. She did she did the spine work. She did the icons. I mean, look at that. It's all reversed. The spine is so fantastic. Here it is with number 2. Look at that. Look at the spines. I love them. The numeral, the icon, flip, and then the numerals. Love it.
Yeah.
Great team. Great team. There you go. Couldn't be happier.
Great. Okay. I was going to talk about covers a little bit later, but we did it now. Now, so I this morning I went back and you had shown up a few years ago to talk about self-publishing on my blog.
Yep.
And you talked about perfectionism being a double-edged sword, and that you basically just had to, you said it, it pushed me to make Price of Power as good as it could be, but at some point I needed to let it go in order to coast smoothly to my next endeavor. And now you're like, well, okay, maybe not so smoothly.
Oh, damn. I feel so called out. This is great.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So here's the deal. Okay. All right, HC. This is fantastic. I love it, actually. I wish, this is so great. You just did some like hardcore investigative journalism. This is, I feel like I'm on Hot Ones over here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, number 1, the thing I forgot to also mention with the relaunch. So all of that stuff is like reason enough to relaunch.
Sure.
In addition, I talking to some peers who are further along and doing much better than me in terms of their making a living at being an author, like thriving as an author, I should say. You can make a living at it. I can make a living at it. I just didn't release books for a while. But they suggested a relaunch because when I did my first book launch, I didn't know so much. There's just so much to learn about self-publishing. It is a deep well. And at a certain point, you get to a certain point, and I'm like, not there quite yet because I haven't done it quite long enough. But knowledge-wise, you get to a certain point where, like, people who are doing crazy well are like, I have no idea why. I mean, this is what I did. It's a lot of with a grain of salt advice, right? Sure. So that should be the motto of self-publishing is, well, mileage may vary, but this is what I did, right? And then, or this is what I'm as successful as that person, but I did the complete opposite, right? So a lot of people not knowing why. But one thing was there were some really clear moves that I made that kind of cannibalized my ability to hit longer term success with the book. So this is very technical. I assume authors watch this, other authors.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess some burgeoning authors may watch this, right? Sure. So just know this. If you launch on Amazon, so one of the things people love to say is nothing sells a first book like a second book. Well, The truth is nothing sells a book like the Amazon algorithm. That shit sells the best if you can hit it right, right? So with my first book, I ran a Kickstarter right before I released it. That cannibalized a ton of sales. The book did well. It cruised. It's done well since then. But then eventually, over the before I took it off Amazon, the 6 to 8 months leading up to that, it started to peter. And it petered and it started flatline. And at that point, there's no reviving it. It's dead. It's just dead. Sure. I could release the second book, I'll get a boost, and that'll cruise for a while. for 6 months, maybe if I'm lucky, and then that will peter, right? And
Mhm.
so what I noticed, and even though it's a huge risk, I was like, well, I don't want my book to just kind of peter and reach like, thousands of people is great. But if I can take a massive risk with this book because I feel like it deserves it and it and reach tens of thousands, I'm going to do that. And the way I had to do that was take the book off Amazon
Mhm.
and relaunch with a way better launch plan, not put it on Kickstarter, not cannibalize my sales there. And so
Sure.
everything is kind of geared toward, as best as I can, hitting an algorithm and then launching book 2 right after that. Book 2 has been done since September of last year, right?
Mhm.
And then launching book 3, within a pretty decent time frame of that. I have 2 novellas that I'm going to relaunch War Song with a alternate cover, and
Okay.
then also launch the sequel to that, Death Dance. And all of that is going to happen within the next 8 months,
Okay.
8 to 9 months.
Sure.
So it'll be Price Power, Graveyard, Banners of Wrath, Novella 1, Novella 2. So five books in a short time. And what that can do is, if I hit good with Price Power on the algorithm, then the rest will just carry it, right? In
Sure.
theory, carry
In
it.
theory. Yeah.
And so you get a longer sales tail, right? And the most importantly, you reach way more readers.
Yeah.
So I would take that long ago thing as proof of concept, and now I'm actually doing the real deal. Right?
Okay. All right. That makes
Um,
sense.
and on a personal note, I got diagnosed with OCD in December, so
Oh, so
I
you weren't
always
just hitting earlier.
wondered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wondered. I was like, what is it that allows me to write and rewrite something this big 8 times?
Yeah.
Like, I have to have something wrong with me, and there it is. I have OCD.
So, so you got a bunch of stuff coming in the next 8 months, and then are you going to take a Martin slash Rothfuss break before the next 2 volumes? I mean, do you have a timeline? I'm not asking
Yeah.
for sign in blood or anything, but do you have a timeline?
Well, okay, so here's the great thing. So this book, book 1 took me so long to write because I was learning. I had like a little guide
Yeah.
under my computer. It's like eliminate, dialogue tags when can, or cut adjectives, or these things telling me eliminate passive voice, right?
Sure.
And so that was like training on book 1, so much training. And I finished it, revised it, right? Draft 2. I probably revised multiple chapters, like big chunks of it, multiple times actually. So I probably did three revisions with an alpha read. Then I did a beta read. I did another revision. I did a tight cut. I did another pass. And I probably revised a bunch of other chapters. So probably 8 drafts.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And then and proofreader. So that was a lot, right? Book
Mm-hmm.
two, which the majority, I've only had one person who's read it so far say they liked book 1 better, but the vast majority of people like book 2 even more because it's a little faster paced, even though it's bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe half the drafts. Okay. Book 3, I did 1 draft and then I just did touch ups and then
Wow.
I gave it to beta readers. I would never. I always do it once, revise it, and
Mm-hmm.
then give it to beta readers. But this time I was like, screw it. Let's just see what happens. And so far, people like book 3, like they love book 3.
All right.
Book 3 is pretty awesome in my opinion. A lot of shit goes down, but one person's like, you could just touch this up and publish it. That's not what I'm gonna do. But what that tells me is that I have the amount of it's saving me time, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point where I can reduce the number of drafts on a book
Mm-hmm.
because it's all just ingrained subconsciously from training, right?
Yeah.
So book 4, I suspect I can get out in 2027, and probably book 5. Well, it depends on how big it gets, but book 5 probably 2028, 2029, somewhere in there.
Sure.
So I would say I'm going to extend, even though it's going to be like book 1 then 2 months later, book 2, and then 6 months later, book 3. I'm going to extend it to probably 8 to 12 months, and then maybe 12 to 18 months between the next 2. That's the plan so far.
Right.
But I mean, plans years in advance. I mean, where do they go?
Right.
They go out the window.
Yeah, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the nose.
Yeah. But I don't want to be like Rothfuss and Martin, because I have a shitload of other series. Like I have a lot of books I would love to write.
Sure.
I'll tell you this. I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but I'm doing it. So I plan to, once I finish this, I'll probably write the Way of the Wizard series, because that shouldn't take very long at all. I'll probably do that up within less than a year. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of this book and I'm going to advance 2,000 years into the future. And I'm going to write a sci-fi trilogy based in the same world.
Nice.
Right. And I think about that all the time. Like, it just comes up. Like, how does this world evolve? How do the religions evolve? How do the countries evolve? What else, comes about? What's the conflict? I'm like, oh, that's cool conflict. Like, there's a lot of very nifty things. And so it's like going to be a fantasy series and a sci-fi series, both.
Nice. Okay. Now,
has anyone ever done that?
There's speculation that Butcher has done that.
Okay.
I don't know if it's been confirmed, but a lot of people speculate that his steampunkish thing happens in the same world as the other thing.
Interesting. Okay. Well, hopefully
his
fantasy, early.
Why can't I think of the name? I'm staring at the spines and I still can't.
Series of Calderon, the Codex Alera.
Yeah.
Codex Alera. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Although hopefully it goes better than, and it's a shorter time. I've never seen anyone do it. I've seen short time jumps, right? Like Abercrombie did it with Age of Madness. It was like a short time jump. Or Avatar: The Last Airbender did like 100 years, right? Sure. With Legends of Korra. But I'm going 2,000.
Yeah, that's now in the middle of all that. You talked about, and I wanted to bring this up, and
just cut me off.
Way of the Wizard. All right.
Oh,
yeah. You're bringing you are going to finish this series.
Yeah. It just might be a minute.
Sure. Is it going to get a relaunch?
I haven't decided yet, because I love that cover so much.
That was going to be my next question. If you relaunch, tell me you're not ruining this cover.
Yeah, I don't really want to. I had 2 more cover ideas, and the cover ideas have to come to me kind of like the book does. It has to be like a boom, all of a sudden download where I'm like, oh, that looks so cool in my head, right?
Yeah.
The 2 covers after that one, I have ideas. One of them looks sick in my head, but the other one is just okay. So I don't know. I haven't decided. I don't even know if I want to. There's a lot of questions to be answered with that one, because I may even turn it into a standalone, a one book. Originally it's broken up in my head into 3, so I might end up releasing 3 different books and then releasing a omnibus of the 3 books, because I think it would be pretty damn big, actually. Yeah, it'd end up being like 300,000 words. Which is a little bit of a big book for entry level readers. So from like a business standpoint, you don't want to be like, hey, get my book. It's 325,000 words and it's not part of a series. People will be like, probably not. But yeah, I have ideas about that. That one has a lot more. There's like some things mechanically that are a lot trickier than, even though the Price of Power is way trickier. There's some things that could give me challenges with that one as well. But I have that one pretty well plotted as well.
Yeah.
But that one's quick.
Yeah.
7,000 words isn't much.
That is a pretty thin one, at least comparatively speaking. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from that book.
Good. Yeah, no, I really thought of it because you talked about you maybe shouldn't have done the Kickstarter for Price of Power, and I know you did a Kickstarter for Way of the Wizard because I contributed. So I know you did one for that one, and I'm just wondering if that's going to be the same thing, especially since it's going to be a while before you can get back to it.
Yeah. If I did Well, now you got me future thinking. If I did a Kickstarter for that one, it would be for books 2 and 3 at the same time, right? I would want to launch them at the same time. But honestly,
but you're kind of, like you said, stealing sales.
yeah, well, but since the first book's already out, I mean, this is a highly technical question, but since the first book's already out, Amazon, so when a book is launched and it's the first in a new series, the series hinges upon the first book. And what Amazon will do is give that series, based on the first book's launch, a honeymoon period of about 30 days, right? And they will give it like preferential treatment. Way of the Wizard launched, it did what it did. I mean, it's very underloved at this point, and that's it for that series. I would have to relaunch with a new series title. I would almost certainly have to change the cover. I would want to change some of the interior. And granted, that book actually has a lot of space to increase word count and page count. So I could do that, add some scenes and stuff, add some chapters, and then restart the launch. And actually, I could. Here's the thing, HC. You don't ignore the advice of people wiser than you. And I did. And I learned from that. That's what I learned from Way of the Wizard is don't ignore people who are wiser, more experienced, and smarter than you. Robin Sullivan was at Dragon Con, and I was asking him, like, I'm a fool. Hey, what should I do with this? You should write all 3 and then rapid release them. Okay, I just fucking released it, did a Kickstarter and released it. That is not what that's not what she said to do, right? And the Kickstarter went well, and I was really happy with it. But, actually, maybe I can make peace with the fact that I did the Kickstarter, and now everybody who was on the Kickstarter has that cover, and then I decommissioned that cover.
Sure.
And then it just feels good that, like, only a small amount of people have that really sweet cover. I'm sure I'll get a cool cover again, but if I do get another cover, just know that you're going to have that one. You'll be one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And since you gave a shout out to Price of Power cover artist, who did Way of the Wizard?
Nino is real. Nino is also excellent.
Yeah.
I love Nino's stuff. There's like a dark vampire epic medieval series I might want to write someday. And I think he would be pretty well suited to that. But now that I have Chris, I just don't know. I'm in like a love triangle. They don't know it, but it's a love triangle with my artists. I don't know who I want. So, and who knows, maybe a third will come along and steal me. I don't know. I think Chris is definitely like, I'm going with him for all 9 books of the Dreams of Dust and Steel world. But and by 9 books, there's 5 in the main series, and there will be 4 in the prequel series. And they're smaller, so each one will progressively get bigger. War Song is like 17,000 words, or 18. Death Dance is going to be 25 plus. Red Storm will probably be 30 something, and then the 4th book will potentially be an actual novel at like 40,000. But we'll see. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Let's see here. You said.
Oh no! Yeah. Now you got me. Another one of these, huh?
No.
Oh.
I was gonna ask what you're reading right now, but you mentioned earlier you're reading was it Prince of Thorns?
Yep. Right? Yep.
And that's going well.
I really am enjoying it. I'm 100 pages in, and it's. Have you seen this book? It is tiny.
Oh really?
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on one second. I'm like, this is great. It's really good, and it's good for me because it's really short. I don't get a lot of books read. Look how little this thing is. Like, this is tiny. I can just grip it in my hand, right? It's so petite. It's the littlest book. Oh God, this reverse. This it's like for scale. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Beep boop. It's just a little guy. But and it's also like the pages are pretty minimal, and you can't really even tell there. It's 300 pages. I got 100 pages in 3 days. It's a quick read. But I'm really enjoying it. And then I just finished Bastion, my first ever progression fantasy.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And it was different than I expected.
Okay.
Way of the Wizard is essentially, I mean, I'm reading it and I've had someone tell me like, you know, if you make these changes to Way of the Wizard, you can sell it as progression fantasy. And I'm like, it feels like progression fantasy after reading Bastion.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure it is. It just is. I thought that you had to have like a template, like you get to the end of the chapter and there's like a box with like lines and it says you like got these stats and blah blah blah, but that's not how it is at all.
Okay.
But that was really good. It was the longest feeling read I've ever had. For some reason, reading on a Kindle makes things feel like that book was, you know, I had the percentage tracker and it's like 20 flips before it goes 1%. And I'm like, oh my God, is this the longest book I've ever read? But I also thought that with Sword of Kaigen, and Sword of Kaigen is not, you know, too much longer than Price Power. So
yeah,
if at all, actually. But yeah, really enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to, I think after this one, it depends. I read based on what I'm writing, right? So I have a few series that I like to read when I'm revising, just because stylistically I can like glean some ideas. You know, it's like, oh, the blade is milky. Oh, that's cool. I like that description, right? And that would be just because their prose is similar to mine. At least that's what I've heard. I don't know if I agree. Age of Madness book 2 is next on the docket, or the third book in A Land Fit for Heroes by Richard K. Morgan. I'll probably read one of those next. If not, I do The Sons of Darkness by Gaurav Mohanty. Just had a really fun exchange with him on Reddit. Just learned that he started indie. I did not know that. And then traditional. But also, again, it's like similar genre vein. So I'm trying to read other people that are as much as I can in my own genre.
That was what I was going to ask. Like, and you kind of alluded to this already. Like you said, you know, I read based on what I'm writing at the time. So you want something in the same vein. You know, I know some authors, like, I read as far away from what I'm writing as possible, so I don't.
Also, that for a first draft, if I'm really struggling, sometimes it's good to read a book that's not as good as yours, because you go, so like I'll do this thing where I'll be like, I'm gonna read someone who's popular that I think is not that great, and then as I'm writing my book, I'm like, I can do better, and then I'm like motivated.
but it's still same genre. You don't like. You're
I mean,
like,
it can be out a little bit.
I could use a space opera right now, so I don't. You know, so my horses and swords are different. You don't do that.
It can be a little bit. It can be. I mean, it can be a little different like that, but it's not like I'm reading like romance or something. Although maybe I'd be open to a romance book at some point. It's just that all the romance books are like, they're really popular, and then this is what happens. I don't know if you've ever noticed this in traditional, but it's like someone becomes extremely popular on their first book or two. First and second book, excellent. And then the third and fourth, you start to see some chinks in the armor. Okay. The book gets bigger. Okay. Because, you know, that increases the page reads on like, you know, Kindle Unlimited or on audiobooks. It makes it more enticing. They don't have as much. They're like, I'm not going to take the time to, you know, edit this as much as the endings. Right. I don't know if you've ever read the 10th book in a series, or like the last 100 pages of a book will have way more grammar and typo errors. Right. And so to me, like highly popular series, especially in like in romance, or YA, they tend to get shittier as they go. And so starting them does not necessarily entice me. Right. Even well, yeah, no, I won't say that.
Yeah, careful what names you mention. This will last forever, and someone else will come at you with a gotcha question in 2 years.
Oh yeah, I've already said some things in some other ones where I'm like, it probably wasn't what I should have said.
I won't bring up what you said about the first law a couple years
ago. Wait, what?
Huh?
What did I say about the first law? I love first law.
You
Well, it's top 10. First Law is top 10. Age of Madness is top 3.
Oh, really? Okay.
Based on the first book alone. I've only read the first in the Age of Madness, and I'm like, well, this is way better than the First Law. The first book of Age of Madness is one of my favorite books ever, I think.
So yeah, you said you describe yourself as the debut author of Price of Power, a grimdark epic fantasy book about loss, redemption, grief, and the danger of beliefs. It's like Game of Thrones meets X-Men, which you already said, or First Law meets a plot.
Yes, I'm gonna stick with that. Actually, I think it's. I knew that's what you were gonna say. After that, I was like, oh, it must have been that. But that's. I mean, listen, the 2 series I mentioned that I want to finish, A Land Fit for Heroes and Age of Madness. Like, A Land Fit for Heroes and First Law, like Richard K. Morgan and Joe Abercrombie, I think they're both fantastic writers. They are. Ooh, I probably actually answered this in the same thing, but like, what authors would I want to like write for the day with, or like co-write a book with?
Yeah.
And I would say Richard K. Morgan would be one of them, but his fucking book doesn't really have much of a plot at all. His series, A Land Fit for Heroes, if there is a plot, I just snooze right past it. I'm just enjoying it sentence by sentence. I'm like, this is great. And the same with First Law. It's like for me, it would probably be the opposite of like, well, I can't say that either. People get their pitchforks out. When I read a book, I want to enjoy every sentence to sentence. I want to find things that spark excitement in me in the sentence itself. I'm looking for like a punch of a sentence, Mark Lawrence is great at doing that at the end of chapters, which I think I love doing that too. If I'm reading a book and I'm like, all right, there's been a whole 80% of a chapter that's pretty bland writing wise. But the ending is, I just don't necessarily give a shit.
Sure.
It's just not what I go for, right?
Yeah.
I kind of read at this point, and my reading habits have changed a little bit since I've been publishing, but I read to feel inspired by the art and craft of writing. But with badass, warriors on horses and stuff. With the drawbridge, Yeah. I don't know.
There you go. Okay. All right. Well, that's everything I've got. Do you want to do a closing pitch? What's your elevator pitch for Price of Power? Let's get the people excited about the new edition, which is available now at all your bookstores or wherever you buy it.
Oh, it is? Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. By the time this airs, yes.
Well, HC, you already kind of pitched it. It's if you love character driven, if you love character drivel, this is the book for you.
Early morning, folks.
It is, and I slept terribly last night. It wasn't the stress of this interview either. Trust me, I was just not able to sleep. I was just awake. Yeah. I actually watched a terrible.
Next time you will be stressed about it, wondering.
Yeah, sure, right. I actually watched it. I did yoga while watching a terrible movie, and it was almost like the movie made me mad. And I was going to sleep. I was like wake up and be like, that fucking movie. That's so stupid. So fucking stupid. Science. Oh, man, you make me rant. I got to rant about this for a second. This is therapy. So, have you seen the movie Life?
I have not.
Stellar cast. They find life on Mars and then they sequester it in their spaceship, and then it evolves and kills a bunch of them, kind of thing, right?
Okay.
I'm not giving you spoilers because don't watch it. All right, that's all I'm saying. But there's some intriguing enough aspects to continue, but the ending was I just thought it was stupid. The concept, it was if I had to sum up the movie, I just kept thinking of this the whole time. Really smart scientists doing the dumbest shit you would ever fucking do. I was like, my suspension of disbelief, right? Suspension of belief? Wait, which is it? Too early.
Disbelief. Yeah.
Disbelief. Yeah. Called into question. I was like, these are scientists. These are the smartest people on earth. This is really dumb. So don't watch that movie. Watch something
You're right.
better.
That is a great cast.
It's a great cast.
Yeah. Holy cow. And they wasted them. All right.
Yep. Wasted. Okay. My thought was they must have had some leftover like spaceship sets from like Gravity or something, because it was like right after that, and I was like, I bet they were like, let's just throw this together. We'll pay them, kill off the like all these actors pretty quick. Budget wise, to like wang, bang, boom, get it out there, make some money. So Price of Power, Game of Thrones meets X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Abercrombie's First Law meets a plot. You already heard it. It's about redemption, grief, loss, and the dangers of belief. It's about the internal journey that we all have to strengthen ourselves, to take the pain of our environment and the suffering of our life and turn it into something useful and powerful. And there's badass, lady warriors and anti-heroes and reluctant heroes and flawed emotional male characters. It's got, children, old people. It's got all the diverse cast. It's got everything that I've ever loved in fantasy, and I somehow threw it in there into the melting pot and kept it cohesive. That could sound pretty incoherent, but it is cohesive. I swear.
Right. And there's a beheading like right out of the gate. I mean,
yeah, but he deserved it. So
oh yeah, no. I'm not saying this isn't Ned Stark. This is
yeah.
This is, yeah.
Good. That'd been a fun way to like integrate that in somehow. It's like he just gets beheaded right off the bat. You like that sword name though?
Oh yeah,
it's a cool sword name.
That is
Lamentation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great name for a sword.
That really
Anyways,
is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read it. I don't know. Read the first. Just read the prologue. You'll probably be like, "This is cool."
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and your patience in getting things going this morning.
That's fine.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, sir. And I'm going to end recording.
All right.